Welcome back everyone. So last class we have discussed Mendel's work, alright? We have seen Mendel's history, life history, then we have seen the reason for Mendel's work failure, then we have seen the reason for Mendel's success, then we have seen the reason for selection of P-plan, and we have seen 7 pairs of contrasting character, okay? You need to remember all those contrasting characters. So next, we need to know some important terms. When we talk about genetics, we need to know some important terms. So I'm going to write one by one. We need to know a few important terms when we study genetics, when we study Mendels Law. The first term is known as gene. What is gene? Gene, it is a functional unit of inheritance. Alright, it is a functional unit of inheritance. Now Mendel has said gene as a unit which is passed from generation to generation. Now the gene was first coined by scientists known as Johann Sen. Please remember, okay, the term gene was first coined by Johann Sen, scientist. Next, you need to know about allele. What is allele? Allele is the alternate form of gene. It is the alternate form of gene. Okay, it is the alternate form of gene. Who first coined allele? Who gave the term allele? It was first coined by scientists known as Bateson or Bateson. One important point you need to remember about Bateson: he is considered as father of modern genetics. And please don't get confused. If question asks who is called as the father of genetics, we go with Mendel. But specifically, if the question asks, be careful when you read out the question. If the question asks who is called as the father of modern genetics, Bateson. Okay? And he first gave the term allele. What is allele? It's the alternate form of genes. Okay, Bateson is the father of modern genetics. Now when we talk about alleles, we categorize into a dominant allele and recessive allele, and we represent the dominant allele in the form of capital letter and recessive in the form of small letter. Okay, when we talk about alleles can be of dominant alleles and can be of recessive allele. Dominant we represent in the form of capital, recessive we represent in the form of small letter. Okay, and that dominant and recessive are represented in the form of capital and small letter. So when we talk about allele, we can categorize into homozygous allele and heterozygous allele. Homozygous allele means the allele of same character. Heterozygous means the allele of different character. Homozygous are classified into, it can be not classified. Homozygous, it can be dominant homozygous and recessive homozygous. What is homozygous allele again? The allele of same character, whether it is dominant or whether it is recessive. What is the allele of, what is heterozygous? The allele of different characters. Okay. So homozygous is dominant. Dominant we represent in the form of capital letter. Suppose here we are talking about tall trees. Okay, tall plant, tall pea plant. So when we talk about tall dominant, homozygous dominant, tall pea plant, we represent in the form of capital T and again capital T. Okay. If we represent homozygous dominant pea plant, what was the dominant, tall or dwarf? Tall were dominant, right? Formula remember. We represent in the capital letter T. And when we write in a capital letter T, that is tall dominant, we represent a recessive one, that is the dwarf, with the same letter only, right? With the same letter, but it should be small letter. If it is T tall, tall means T, we represent with the same letter only, not D, not small d. Dwarf, not, it doesn't mean dwarf, it should be start with D. No, we represent with the same letter, whatever we represent the dominant one. So recessive will be small letter T. Okay, not small d. Okay, so be careful. So homozygous means the allele of same character we represent in the form of capital letter. Suppose for example I am writing it capital T. So we are considering tall tree, tall plant. Okay, so if it is flower color, flower, which one is dominant? Flower, which color is dominant? Purple, right? Purple. And which one is recessive? White is recessive. So if we consider flower color, we will represent with capital letter F. Oh, sorry, P is dominant, right? Purple, P. So if we represent flower color homozygous, we represent in the letter P, because P is purple. So homozygous dominant will be capital P. Homozygous recessive will be small p. Okay, small p. So recessive flower color are white. We do not represent with small white. We represent with the same letter. So here we are considering tree or plant, height. So tall. Okay. Heterozygous, there is no any dominant or recessive in case of heterozygous. What is heterozygous again? The allele of different characters. So we represent with one capital letter T and one with small letter T. So T, we are taking the example of plant height only. Okay, we can take the example of flower color, we can take the example of flower position, but we are taking the example of height. So allele, it is an alternate form of gene. It was first coined by Bateson. Bateson was also known as father of modern genetics. Now when we talk about allele can be represented in the form of dominant allele and recessive allele. Dominant we can represent in the form of homozygous dominant and a heterozygous dominant. Okay, homozygous dominant and recessive, homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive, and heterozygous allele. Homozygous means the allele of same character. Heterozygous means the allele of different character. Okay. So next, after allele, we need to know. So these are the terms that you need to remember. Okay, remember the name of the scientist along with the spelling. Spelling, be careful. Next important term we need to know about phenotype and genotype. What is phenotype and genotype? Phenotype means external appearance. Genotype means internal appearance, genetic makeup. Okay. When a cross is made, the result that we obtain, so whatever the character appears outside the characters, we represent in the form of phenotype. And whatever the character appears inside, that means inside gene, whatever the changes takes place in the gene, we represent in the form of genotype. Okay, phenotype means external characters. Alright, genotype means genetic characters, that means internal characters. Genetic characters, external and genetic or internal characters we can write. Okay, these are the remembering point. Before going to details about genetics, we need to know some basic things. Okay, phenotype. We will get the name phenotype and genotype all the time. So a phenotype means, remember, external appearance. So when the cross is made between two parents and the result that is obtained, whatever the result obtained, outside the appearance of the structure called as phenotype, and inside the structure of the organism is known as genotype. All right. Okay. So next, then cross. Then cross is made between two parents. What is crossing? Cross. It is a crossing between two parents. All right. It is a crossing between two parents. Two parents are cross, and the resultant that we obtain. Now, when we talk about cross, there are two types of cross: back cross and test cross. Just remember the definition: back cross and test cross. We don't have to go in details about those two. Just remember the definition. Sometimes question asks for 2 mark or 1 mark. Okay. When we talk about cross, so cross are made between two parents, between two different parents. Okay. And then the cross can be of two types: back cross and test cross. What is back cross? Just remember the definition. Back cross is made to find out the genotype of unknown homozygous dominant recessive and heterozygous. That's it. Okay. Back cross is made to find out the genotype, not phenotype, genotype of unknown homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, and heterozygous. All right. Then we have test cross. What is test cross? Test cross is a cross. Test cross is a cross between F1 hybrid. What is F1? We will see next. Test cross is a cross made between F1 hybrid. Test cross is a cross made between F1 hybrid and homozygous recessive parents. All right. Just remember the definition. There are two types of crosses: back cross and test cross. While in back cross, it is a cross between, to find out, it is a cross made to find out the genotype of unknown homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, and heterozygous. In test cross is made between F1 hybrid and homozygous recessive parent. That's it. Okay. So a cross is made between two parents. Then after the cross is made, the result, the generation that appears, we represent in the form of filial generation, F. We represent in the form of capital letter F. So after the cross is made between two parents, the result that is obtained, the generation that is obtained, we represent in the form of capital letter F. Okay, and we call it as a filial generation. So after the cross is made, whatever the character appears, we represent in the form of capital letter F, and that can be first generation, then that generation, after again cross, next generation. So we represent in the form of consequences of capital letter F1, F2, F3, whatever the cross is made. Okay. So filial generation is the result obtained in next generation. Okay. The result obtained in next generation. So we represent in the form of capital letter F1, capital letter F2, and so on. Okay, depending on the cross is made. So how many times the cross is made? If the cross is made first time, then we represent the capital letter F1. Again, if after that cross, again if again cross is made, So we represent the form of capital F2. So we will understand, don't worry. These are the terms you need to remember first before going to details about this chapter. So that is filial generation. After filial generation, we need to know is about selfing. What is selfing? What is selfing? So after the cross is made between two individuals, between two parents, whatever the result that we obtain, so we represent in the form of filial generation, that is F1. So if we again made that generation, if we again cross that generation, that is F1 generation, if we again cross F1 generation, then we call it as a selfing. Okay, so after the cross is made between two parents, whatever the result that we obtain, that we represent the form of capital letter F1, and that result if we again cross between the same parent, we call it as a selfing. Okay, selfing is cross between parents, of same characters, crossing between the parents of same characters. Okay, you will understand, don't worry. Then what else? Punnett square. What is Punnett square? So whatever the result that we obtain, we represent in a square box. We write in a square manner, a square box, okay? And that square is called as Punnett square. Result obtained Punnett square. Punnett name comes after scientist name, Punnett. Okay, whatever the result that we write after cross, that result is made, we write in a table, square table. Then we can write monohybrid. Monohybrid cross. What is monohybrid cross? Monohybrid cross is the crossing between parents. The crossing between parents differ. Crossing between parents differ in one character. Crossing between parents differ in one character. It is monohybrid. Then we have dihybrid cross. What is dihybrid cross? Is the crossing between parents differ in two characters. You will understand, don't worry, when we do the sum. So that these are the terms that you need to remember before going to details about the genetics. Okay, so phenotype, genotype, crossing, selfing, Punnett square, monohybrid cross, and dihybrid cross. So ratio we will obtain when we made a monohybrid cross, we get a ratio. When we do dihybrid cross, we get a ratio. That ratio we need to remember. I'll show you how. So these are the important terms. Remember the genes, remember the alleles. These are the scientist name. All are important. So next we go with the Mendels Law. So Mendels Law of Inheritance. Mendel have provided 3 laws based on inheritance. Mendel Law of Dominance, Mendel Law of Segregation, and Law of Independent Assortment. So 3 laws are there based on inheritance. So Mendel have provided 3 laws. So next topic is Mendel Law of Inheritance. What is Mendel's law of inheritance? Or first law. So Mendel's law of inheritance. So there are 3 laws provided by Mendel. The first law are known as Mendel's law of dominance. So what Mendel's law of dominance says? Mendel's law of dominance states that if in a contrasting alleles, when two contrasting allele of a character, when two contrasting of allele of a character come together in one organism, only one is expressed and shows visible effect. The other ones remains hidden and they are known as recessive. Okay, when two alleles come together in an organism, only one allele shows visible effect and we call it as a dominant, and the other alleles they remains hidden and we call it as a recessive. So this is law of dominant. Okay, so one allele will dominate the other allele. In a simple word, one allele will show the characters, they will show the visible effect, and they will dominate the other allele. The other alleles remains hidden and they are called it as a recessive. Okay, that's why dominance, law of dominance. When two alleles come together in an organism, only one shows visible effect and they are known as dominant, and the other remains hidden and they are known as recessive. That's it. Okay, that means in simple word, when a cross is made between two individuals, between two parents, the one allele will dominate the other alleles, okay, and they will show the visible effect, while the other alleles remains hidden and they will not show any visible effect. That's it. And this law is not universally applicable. Okay, there are some exceptions, we will see. So what this law says, Mendel's law of dominance states that when two contrasting alleles of a character come together in an organism. Okay, when two contrasting alleles come together in an organism, only one shows visible effect. Oh, yes, it is visible, an effect. Only one shows visible effect. Okay, so when two crosses made between two parents, only one shows visible effect, and they are called as only one shows visible effect, and they are called as dominant, and the other allele remain hidden and are called as recessive. Okay, that's it. So what Mendel's laws of dominance says, so when the cross is made between two alleles, that means between two parents, the one allele will dominate the other allele and that allele will show its visible effect, the other alleles will remain hidden, it will not show its visible effect. So that's it. So this law is not universally applicable. Write it down, not universally applicable. This law is not universally applicable. Okay, this law is not universally applicable. So there is some exception. That is too dark. Okay, now when we made a cross, we take a homozygous dominant. Okay, below you do the crossing. Okay, homozygous dominant, and we take a homozygous recessive, homozygous tall plant and homozygous recessive dwarf plant. Okay, this is our parents. Now next, the gametes they will produce. The tall plant will produce these gametes, the dwarf will produce these gametes, and a cross is made. So the first cross, the result that we obtain, we represent in the form of filial generation, that is first generation, so F1. If again, so after crossing, whatever the result that we obtain, we represent in the form of first generation, that is F1. Okay, so when we made a cross between two parents, so there will be capital T and small t. capital T and small t. So the result that we obtain in first generation are all tall. Why? Because capital T is dominant, right? So capital T is dominant, so the resultant product will be all tall plant. Okay, according to this law, what it says, when two cross is made between two parents, that means between tall and dwarf, only dominant will show its visible effect. So only the dominant, that is capital T, will show its visible effect. That means the plant will be all tall. Only the dominant will show its visible effect. The plant will show all tall. Alright, but this law is not universally applicable. In some cross, we find that the dominant and the recessive both show its character. So there are some exceptions. We will see that very later in a different in the next topic. Okay, so what it says, Mendel law of dominance. When a cross is made between two individuals, okay, when two alleles come together in one organism, one dominate the others, it's a visible effect, and others remain hidden and they are known as recessive. So by crossing we can find it out. Alright, so when cross is made, so parents, there will be a tall, we made a cross between the tall and dwarf, homozygous tall and homozygous dwarf plant. So the gametes, they will produce one T, one small t, one capital T, one small t. Be careful with the letter, okay, capital and small. So when the cross is made, the first generation that is obtained in F1 are all dominant, T, capital letter. So this law, so Mendel law of dominance says that the dominant will show only the visible effect. Alright.